alaikum, hello and welcome everyone. Ramadan Kareem to all Muslims around the world. In today's video, I'm going to teach you present perfect tense, how to form it and when to use it. So, if you are ready, let's get started.
Before we get started, it's good to know how to conjugate the verb to have. قبل ما نبداو خاصكم تعرفوا كيفاش conjugate the verb to have. For the singular forms, I have, you have, he has, she has, it has. For the plural forms, we have, you have, they have. It's also good to know that in English language there are regular verbs and irregular verbs. كما كتعرفوا في اللغة الإنجليزية عندنا regular verbs and irregular verbs. And it is advisable that you study the most commonly used irregular verbs. Now let's get started. How to form a present perfect? Let's have a look at the regular verbs. For the regular verbs, we use the auxiliary verb to have and the past participle. You can make a past participle by adding ed to the infinitive form of the verb. Now let's have a look at the singular forms. دابا غادا نشوفوا singular and plural forms. I have worked there. You have listened carefully. He has cleared the table. She has placed it on the floor. It has snowed. For the plural forms, we have walked to school. You have watched the tennis match. They have marked the tests. Now we need to pay extra attention to verbs that end in an E, such as leave, close, and wipe. هنا خاصنا pay attention to verb that end in a letter E, بحال leave, close, and wipe. And for these verbs, we use the auxiliary verb to have and the past participle. وهنا كنحتاجو verb to have and the past participle. But the past participle is made by simple adding a D to the verb. Look at these examples. I have lived there for quite some time now. He has closed the window. They have wiped the floor. We also need to pay attention to verbs that end in a Y, especially those preceded by consonant, such as spy and study, because we change the Y into an I. وهنا كنبدلو letter Y into an I. For example, he has spied on his neighbors. We have studied hard. Now let's have a look at the irregular verbs. For the irregular verbs, we also use the auxiliary verb to have and the past participle. دابا غادي نشوفوا irregular verbs. هنا في irregular verbs كنحتاجو بحال في regular verbs كنحتاجو verb to have and the past participle. لكن هنا for the irregular verbs the past participle عنده واحد unique present perfect form. Take a look at the examples. I have built that shed with my own two hands. The infinitive form of the verb is to build with a D. She has bought some flowers at the market. The infinitive form of the verb is to buy. We have run the marathon. The infinitive form of the verb is to run. Now let's look at the present perfect tense in questions. First, for the regular verbs. Again, we use the auxiliary verb to have and the past participle. دابا غادا نشوفو present perfect في ال questions. غادا نبداو مع regular verbs. Again, كنتحتاجو auxiliary verb to have and the verb in the past participle. For example, Has she talked to him yet? Have you kicked the ball? Have they ever walked on a farm? For the irregular verbs, we also use the auxiliary verb to have and the past participle. دابا غادي نشوفو irregular verbs. حنا كنحتاجو auxiliary verb to have and the past participle، لكن دابا كنحتاجو unique present perfect tense form. For example, has she quit her job yet? Have you ever driven a car? Have they ever paid for dinner? Let's have a look at the present perfect tense in negations. For the regular verbs, again the auxiliary verb to have, and we add not, contracting it into haven't or hasn't, and the past participle. هنا في النيجاتيف فورم كنتحتاجو for regular verbs كنتحتاجو verb to have and not وهذا verb and in the past participle. I haven't listened to the news. It hasn't rained since Friday. They haven't closed the window. For the irregular verbs, we also use the verb to have and not, contracting it into haven't or hasn't, and the past participle. For example, she hasn't quit her job. The infinitive form is to quit. You haven't ever driven a car. The infinitive form is to drive. They haven't paid for dinner. The infinitive form of the verb is to pay. Let's have a look at the present perfect tense in use. We use the present perfect tense for things that happened in the past, but it's not important when they happened. We use present perfect ملي كنهضروا على الحوايج اللي كتوقعوا في الماضي لكن ماشي مهمين نعرفوا امتى يوقعوا. For example, I have been to Scotland. It's not important when I have been there. It's important that I have been to Scotland. Next example. They have decided to buy a car. It's not important when they decided it. The decision alone is important. We also use the present perfect tense for things that started in the past that have continued in the present. Also we use present perfect ملي كنهضروا على الحوايج اللي كتوقع في الماضي لكن they continue في present. For example, Tarek and Zay have known each other for ages. For example, they met in 1970s and they are still friends. Next example. They have lived there since 2011. So they moved there in 2011 and they have continued to live there. We also use the present perfect when the following words are in a sentence. For, yet, never, ever, just, already, since. Here are some examples. I have lived here for 3 years. We haven't seen that film yet. Have you ever watched a football game?
Thank you so much for your attention. For more videos, تابعوني في الفيسبوك باج جروب سكولير سبارتا.